Welcome in, ladies and gentlemen. You are now joining Abdel Rodriguez on the guest list. Abdel is the founder of Kronis, which creates independent goalkeeping gloves. These things are pretty fascinating to look at. He is also, get this, the goalkeeper coach for the Las Vegas Lights and our UNLV Rebels. Man, those are two quite prestigious teams. And as we were talking, seems like soccer's trying to make its way out here with the MLS. So I think you have a bright future, and thank you for coming on.
No, thank you for having me, man. It's been a journey to get, on all these podcasts, especially yours. A lot of my friends have been on, and all of my friends that know people that have been on it. So it's been cool to kind of see you grow and see other people that I know on this thing. So
I appreciate that, man. Dude, it's just, I have such deep conviction in Vegas. I think that we are in the beginning stages, or as Paul Gonzalez I had on the show, we call it the golden age of Vegas, of culture. I see it growing here, and there's just there's like such a profound entrepreneurial spirit out here, as with yourself, and you experience it. And a lot of people who listen to this podcast who aren't from here, that have moved out here and message me, and they're like, I never realized how much opportunity is out here in Vegas, because you don't need to have, a degree from Harvard or even any sort of education. You can come out here and build and have a very bright future. Yeah.
No. And honestly, you saying that, it's kind of like the immigrant mindset in a way. It's people like myself and a lot of people in my circle who come from a different country, that come from, in a way, third world countries, and literally the U.S. is that. It's a place that you can come in with literally nothing and make something out of it and live, I think, the definition of what we assume the American dream is, right? So it's crazy to say that about a city, because I feel like the whole country's like that. I feel like anywhere you go, you can literally make it happen with whatever you have, and the world will give you back whatever you put into it. So it's been awesome to see other people around my age, like yourself, like George, or like all of the people we spoke about, that are doing something out of it with literally just a little idea, and it just blows up, and here you go,
Yep. There's so much niche and nuance to the different industries that are out here, or emerging markets that eventually will transform into industries.
Yeah.
But going along the lines of, the American dream, and you could kind of take that ideal and implement it into any of the cities. The only thing is, like, some of these more developed cities like LA and New York, there's kind of like gates around these different institutions. Like, to get into the financial industry in New York, you have to have a master's degree from Harvard, plus know people. In LA, it's a little bit more gated with the film industry and a bunch of the influencing. In Vegas, it's almost like it's just open field. It's like a no man's land. Like, anybody could get into anything by just either networking with somebody. The degrees of separation out here is very limited. Like, I met you through just one person. It's like everyone knows each other within 1 to 2 degrees of separation, which makes it beautiful.
100%. I mean, like, even I was saying about George, it's my best friend's friend, and then my barber's cousin. And it's kind of like, oh, really? Or it's hilarious because my barber's father is really close to my dad. And we just found this out maybe a week ago. My dad kind of showed up, and I'm just like, what are you doing here? And it's like, oh, I know his dad. It's like, it's so small, and it's growing so big. And going back to, the guy was saying, the golden era, it kind of is, just because I still feel if you go back to your average 50-year-old couple, they still view maybe Vegas as a little bit of like, oh, that's a crazy town. If you talk a lot to the older people that don't live in Vegas, or maybe live in, outside of Vegas, say like, oh yeah, Vegas has some crazy history. And I think that because of that kind of, what people think of it, it's the reason why people today can come in and literally do whatever they need to do and blow up whatever business they're doing, or whatever their path is, because there's so much opportunity to come in and be taken care of without, like you said, those walls in the financial district or whatever district that you're in that you're trying to get into. Yeah,
exactly. For a long time, Vegas was viewed as a retirement destination. It was similar to Florida. But now we see this wave of remote workers who are moving out here. And a lot of these remote workers are our age, they're about 40 years or younger. So they also see that opportunity. And that's one of kind of my thesis behind that. By the end of the 2020s, Vegas is going to have a lot of industries that are starting to be built now from the entrepreneurs like us that are just going to come out of nowhere and people are going to be like, wait, what the fuck happened?
Yeah. No, definitely. I mean, it seems like every generation, the idea of Vegas changes, you know, like from what my father tells me to what other older gentlemen tell me of what they experience. I mean, when you think about, you know, the mob era, and then you come in and you think about like, oh, Vegas used to be tiny and like that downtown was a strip. And then like, oh, now the strip is a strip. When I lived in Cleveland and people would tell me like, oh, you live in Las Vegas. And I think the fact that we technically don't, I mean, we do, but we don't have suburbs also throw them off. Because to them, Vegas is a strip, right? So the typical cliche thing of like, oh, so you live in the casino. And I'm like, no, there's houses around it. You know, there's more to do than just be at the strip all day. So in you know, even what was that, 2012, 2013, like that thought process is still there because it's so, I feel like it's so like a different world in a way, you know? There's no suburbs the way like Cleveland has suburbs or LA has suburbs. And when you think of LA, or if you say like, oh, you're from LA, and it's like, no, I'm from, you know, Long Beach or wherever.
And there's like 400 different suburbs.
Yeah, so it's kind of like, to them, LA is just a downtown area. And to everyone, well, that's what the strip is, right? That's Vegas. And they just assume that's where you live, right? So, and I think also there's a cliche thing in that, you know, there's a lot of money in Las Vegas. And if you live in Vegas, it must be very expensive or whatever it is. But I mean, when we think about our house market is, you know, one of the, I don't want to say the most inexpensive, but, you know, when you compare it to the Vegas, I mean, the LA prices or even in Cleveland price, you know, it's pretty on the low end, you know, so.
Yeah, that's why Vegas last year for 2020 was the number 2 destination for new residents moving here. And before that was in the top 5, might have been number 2 as well. I mean, get to check those stats, but I know it was up there as well. So people are saying, you know, in LA, you can sell a 2,000 square foot house for $2 million, come down here and buy a freaking castle for that amount, you know? And even rent is increasing. This apartment in this building, you know, it's between $1,000 to $1,400, but that's relatively cheap compared to $4,000 in San Francisco and some of these other places. So it really is affordable, and you don't need that much, especially for those who go work on the strip. I worked on the strip for the last 10 years. You could go and make 6 figures in some of these positions. And as long as you don't go give it back, going out and gambling and partying, which some of us do get caught up with, you can build a real substantial business with that sort of money and that kind of revenue.
Yeah, no, 100%. I think it's, you know, me in the coaching world, I mean, it's a city, that you're able to, it's so small that once you get in, you're in, you know, and at least in my soccer world where, you know, the fact that I was 20 years old and I was able to create something. And I remember telling people like, I feel like unless I do it, no one's going to do it. And, you know, luckily we're here and it's, you know, the academy is massive, you know, my coaching resume is a pretty heavy resume. So, and it's all done at a very young age because one, I think because we're in Vegas and there's not older coaches that are kind of like, you know, not letting those doors open up versus like in LA. I mean, it's so hard to break through. It's so hard to come in and it's so hard to get a high-end position because you have people that have been doing it for generations and they're just gonna let their buddies do it, you know, and it's almost like it's a clique. And if someone doesn't like you, then everyone doesn't like you versus here. I mean, I think the biggest name of coaching was my coach from UNLV, Dan Schell, right? So he was probably the biggest one and that was it. There was no one else. It was just one guy and he couldn't do it by himself. Right. So
yeah, there's a lot of open field.
There was I mean, it was wide open and he was, you know, getting older and it's kind of like, I mean, your knees start to hurt. So it's kind of like at one point you're going to stop and at one point someone has to continue it, you know? So, Dan was in the right place at the right time. I think he's from Oregon. He moved here like 07, whatever. He played it at UNLV as well back in the 90s. So he came in and there was nothing. And literally that was in a way my only competition at that time, which was great. I didn't have to worry about nothing. I just, you know, were able to get my few kids, was able to train them, coach them, whatever. And then here we are, you know, academy in, you know, multiple parts of the country and it's, you know, just blossoming.
Yeah, that academy is great. I do see coaches in a very similar light as I do entrepreneurs. There's a lot of similar principles that you follow and traits that you acquire along that journey. For you are literally both. You know, you're an entrepreneur because you founded Kronis and you're also a goalkeeper coach for 2 different teams.
Yeah.
What types of similarities and differences have you experienced between the balancing of being a coach and running your entrepreneurial business?
Well, I mean, it's a special place just because, you know, I'll take it one step further. Being a goalkeeper, it's such a cruel lifestyle. The life of a goalkeeper is literally, unless you play, you get forgotten. And obviously as a field player, you have more chances. There's 10 positions on the field that you can literally get adjusted to, right, based off the opponent, based off what the team needs, based off the coach's style. So you can be a center back. My best friend, one of them, Brad, is a left back from France, and at UNLV he was playing center back. And you can get adjusted like that. One of my other close friends, another MLS guy, Kevin Partita, who plays on the field, and he can get adjusted all over the midfielder, right? So there's opportunities for you to move on, and then you have the goalkeeper who, that's it. I can't get adjusted. And on top of that, I have to beat out 3 guys every single weekend. And it's very easy to just, and usually in soccer, you don't adjust that guy, right? So he starts, he plays, and the coach believes in him, and that's it. You don't adjust that guy whatsoever. So it's almost like in my opinion, I always give my success to that position due to the fact that has cultivated into the human that I am, where it's always been either you're the best or you're not going to play, and then you forget about what you wanted, right? So it was the same thing when I started Kronis, when I started the Kronis Academy, with our camps, with everything that we do, the pathway, where it's either we're number one or we're going to get forgotten, right? And obviously we're still fairly new. We're still, in the early stages of the company. It was just funded 2013. I didn't go full time until 2016 after I graduated. So it was one of those things where the harder you push, you have to continue pushing, because these levels, you go up, and it's almost like how I said, like in the soccer world, you go from, a youth player to an amateur level to now you're in college. And now if you do hit the pro life, every level just gets harder and harder and harder. So to me, it was that, it was me being a goalkeeper going year in, year out against whoever was able to get brought in, and you have to keep playing. And if you don't, well, that's it. That's where your career ends, and luckily my career got at a decent level. I didn't experience what some of my friends do, play MLS or whatever it was, but it's a pretty good experience at what I was able to get to. But to me, that's what all goes to it. And when you go into the coaching world, like you said, it's almost similar, because there's so many codes you got to follow. There's so many regulations you have to follow. And as you go up in the rankings of your licensing, or, the national team or whatever it is, it just gets harder for you, because there's so much more. And I think there's also so much pressure on you to continue doing whatever got you there, which gets hard in the sense of, like in the pro world, if the head coach gets fired, you get fired as well, unless the new guy decides to like you and he keeps you or whatever it is. So
there's a political system too.
Yeah, so it's always hard. It's always hard to continue that, and especially when, like, you as a goalkeeper coach, you just take care of your 3 guys, 4 guys, that's it. And a lot of times the results are happening. Yeah, they have to do with you, but not so much, because in a way, it's kind of like I don't know much about football, but how football has like the offensive side, defensive team or whatever, and like how normally they don't even like get along. It's like 2 separate teams. Well, that's how it is with goalkeepers. Usually your goalkeeper union is like your best friends, and the coach is there, and your coach is kind of like your buddy, and and that coach is completely separated from the staff as well, right? So. And to also have the failures of like the head coach's staff, and they're also part of you, and okay, we're getting fired. All right, well, I guess we're all getting fired, So it's one of those things where it's weird, and you have to continue, because again, you have to prep that one guy that has to deal with so much crap during the game.
Yeah, I presume that being a goalkeeper or goalkeeper coach, it's a very intimate relationship with one another. Yeah. And comparing it to American football, it'd be similar of the quarterback setup, right? You have your starting quarterback and you have your 2 backups. So there's usually 2 to 4 quarterbacks on the team, and you have one coach who's just with them 24/7. Yeah. And the backups don't ever get play unless there is a drastic injury or something happens to come in. So it is very, you almost seem exiled at a point, because you, especially if you're a backup, you want to see your team do well, but you also want to play, but you don't want to wish an injury on your teammates. So it's like this weird relationship where you have to believe in yourself, but you have to be prepared to play at any given moment. Yeah, no, and it's like you said, it's so weird, because when I was out in Mexico, it's one of the things that I learned, right? So I was 15, and the guy who was playing ahead of me was 21, right? Because there's no age groups anymore. It's you're good enough, that's it. And it's one of those things where, in a way, you do wish him an injury, because that's the only way. That's the only way you're going to get any minutes. And
And I just read like a quote from Tom Brady, and he was saying like, if you get a chance, like don't let it go. And that's it. That's literally what you're waiting on. You know, every goalkeeper today in this world that is playing at a high level or at any level is due to them taking someone's spot. You know, that's the reality. They're, you know, maybe if you're, you know, in the youth stages, it's still okay because there's more teams. But even now, like at the U13 level, it starts to really, really, you know, get cutthroat in the sense of you have maybe two of the best goalkeepers on the same team, and only one of them is going to continue after maybe the age of 16, right? And it just gets harder and harder like that. So in a way, yeah, you want your team to be successful, but you want it to be successful with you playing, you know?
Yeah, yeah. You don't see many systems in all sports where you have a 2 quarterback system or a 2 goalie system.
Yeah.
The Golden Knights are kind of running that right now. I don't know if you follow soccer, but they have Marc-Andre Fleury, who's been there since the beginning.
Yeah.
You know, took them to the Stanley Cup. And then you have Robin Lehner, who's been playing really well. And so now they kind of rotate them in, but it creates this weird animosity between the goalkeepers.
Yeah.
And you know that being a goalkeeper or a quarterback, a lot of the play isn't your physical capabilities. It's your mental quickness and your awareness of different scenarios. So if your mind isn't on playing and you're worried about this person taking your spot, the coaches, I assume, are probably aware of that scenario.
No, 100%, you know, and it's also such a psychological thing too, because you don't understand it. You know, you don't understand why can't you just leave me in the whole time? Like, where aren't I good enough? You know, why is it that someone else is getting my reps or whatever it is when it seems like you trust me enough, but you know, for whatever reason, they also trust the other guy. You know, and it happened. What was it? 2014 in the World Cup. You know, you had Holland that would play Jasper Cillessen the whole game, and then for the penalty shoots, they'd put Tim Krul. And it's so weird because, you know, as a goalkeeper, it's kind of like, well, that's your place to shine. You know, goalkeeper penalty shootouts are, in a way, you can only be successful, right? You're not supposed to save these, right? A PK is literally a free goal. So the fact that if you can save one, if you can save two, you know, you that's the one place where goalkeepers become heroes in the game, right? So if you take me out of that, it's kind of like that's you hitting me at the lowest point because that's the only place I could really be successful. You know, Dan Schell, the goalkeeper coach, you know, prior to me, he once told me that we can only end the game as best as we started it, meaning that we start at 0-0. That's as best as we're going to end up. We can't go up from there, right? So the way we start is the best way we can end, the best scenario for the goalkeeper, because it's only going to go down. If you lose 1-0, even if you win 3-1, even if you win 4-3, whatever, you still let 3 in, right? So your day is only getting harder as the play goes. And that's why it's so important for the defense and for the goalkeepers when they get the shutout. You know, it's a celebration moment because it's so hard to keep that. You know, it's so hard to keep that score, and it's especially for the goalkeeper, it's a psychological game the whole time, right? On average, you literally maybe touch, I think it's 1 minute of the whole 90 minutes. So you're only really involved physically for 1 minute, and for the remaining minutes, you're psychologically, communication, the mental aspect of it, that you're trying to keep everyone afloat with it. So it's such a crazy lifestyle with that.
Yeah, confidence is really important when it comes to being a goalkeeper.
Massive,
and if you have that shattered confidence either internally where you let one goal by, right? Like if you're an offensive player, you could take as many shots as you need on the goal. You could take upwards of, I don't know the actual stats, but I'm just going to say 10 shots per game. Yeah. Whereas if you're a goalkeeper and you let one shot get past you, that could literally be the game.
That's it. You know, and it sucks is like you're in the States, we rank goalkeepers based off that, like shot on goal average or whatever it is. And if it's like you got one a game and you let that one in, I mean, it drops your rankings tremendously. You know, and also sometimes it helps with how much you're saving or whatever it is. But yeah, I mean, the field players can mess up all they want, you know, and literally you have to play a perfect game, you know.
So let's talk about your story first. Which goalkeeping coaching position came first, the Lights or the Rebels for you?
Rebels, yeah, the UNLV, yeah. So I was with UNLV from 2013 to 2015 playing, and then for whatever reason we moved to morning training sessions. We used to train at 3 p.m., which honestly was brutal. So it was such a smart idea by Coach Rich and Liam to move us up to 8 a.m. So when we moved up, Dan wasn't able to make it anymore, right? So they were looking for a new position. And at this point, I had already been coaching since 2011, right? So, you know, 2021 embarks my 10th year as a coach. And in a way, it was without me even knowing of it, you know. So I was coaching at that point for 5 years. So I forget what I turned in my resume or whatever. And I added in and I put everyone that I had dealt with on the coaching side. And they kind of just took they kind of just said, screw it, let's do it. We know Abdel, and they kind of knew already of Kronis. Kronis Academy was technically already existing. So I think Rich was just kind of like, whatever, if he's willing to do it, we're willing to.
Had faith in you.
Yeah. So 2016, I started off as part of the staff, right? Which is really weird because I literally went from, showering or playing or crying, winning with these guys, arguing with them, fighting with some of them, to now I'm a coach. And you have to see me different, but it was such a weird relationship in that way.
Yeah, that transition's tough.
Yeah, it was tough. When I was playing, there was a kid named Enrique who I was really close with. Enrique came from Las Vegas High School, who was technically my backup there that last year, who now I'm responsible of, right? And that was a good transition just because it was such a, it was already me being a senior, him being a freshman, to now me coach him finally playing. But there was older, buddies of mine that were, Nate, Richie, Garnes, who were competition for those past 3-4 years that now I'm responsible for coaching. So it was such a weird dynamic that maybe it was too early for me, too early for the staff, too early for the guys, but, it worked out. I started 2016, stayed with them technically up until now, due with COVID and everything, it gets a little tough because my schedule doesn't permit me to always be, on the safe side of it without my academy, because I have to be out there. And the last thing you want is that because of me, I'm, possibly getting everyone sick or whatever, So, but, they came first, and it's been a great journey. I was lucky enough to handle the men's and the women's side. So I have experience on both of them where, it's such a big deal for anyone to just handle one of the men's or the females sport. So I was lucky enough to have both experience on both of them.
That experience with men and women is paramount. You understand the different physical capabilities and the different mindsets within women and men. Sometimes people dismiss women just because their physical capabilities aren't as superior as most men, but they are mentally tough. And you see it through their play as well. I had some experience coaching women's flag football, recreationally for a few years through UNLV and in high school. And that experience really taught me what women have and their fierceness for play.
Yeah, no, and it's unfortunate. It's unfortunate where there's many coaches that will, they'll what's the word? They will use the fact of the gender to kind of keep a family in their academy or whatever it is, right? So, it's been numerous times that I get, calls or questions or texts of like, oh, well, this old goalkeeper coach used to let my daughter train with boys because she was so good. And it's like, no, he's just lying to you about that. He just wants to keep whatever his fee is. And this is the best way to continue to keep you there because you think that that's better. The reality is that I don't think there should ever be some sort of, gender barrier. I think boys and girls should just be, at least in my world, in the goalkeeper world, should be developed the same exact way. Right. So, for example, right now, Emberly Sevilla, the UNLV starter, came from my academy. Taylor Book, same thing. She's a freshman coming in, came from my academy. So you have those two girls that from the get-go have always been with boys. I had never separated them because they're girls and they don't get to train. And there's a lot of coaches that do that. They'll say like, oh, you're so good for the girls, you're going to come in with the boys. And it's almost like that's kind of like a slap in the face. And I believe so. Why is it that I have to be good, in fact, to be with the boys? Why can't boys come in and train with the girls, right? Because the reality is that Emberly can probably hang with 99% of the boys. I mean, I would love to see her play UNLV men's game, and I really don't think that she'll mess it up at all. She's arguably one of the best, if not the best girls in the country, and we're lucky enough to have her here at UNLV, and many of the people don't know about that, right? So she had always been training with Angel Alvarez, with, Olsen, the lights guys, right? And even today, they request her to come out to train because they know she's not going to ruin her sessions. So the reality is that it should never be a gender barrier, or if you're the girl, so you train with girls, and you're boys and you train with boys, they should just be trained the exact same. And I think due to that mentality of mine has gave me so much success as a coach because they get pushed the exact same way. I'm not going to push one kid more just because he's a boy and the other girls say like, oh, well, you're a girl, so you can't handle it. they got to handle the same exact physical toll, psychological toll than anyone else in the same game. So, yeah, I mean, I just did the exact same thing, treated them as what they are. You know, they're humans, and that's it. You know,
that's smart. Yeah, that's a great way. That's a great line of thinking in terms of coaching. And also when it comes to soccer, it's not as, there is a lot of contact. It is physical, but it's more agility and quickness, where you compare it to things like football, where it's like that gender barrier is not going to be crossed. But in soccer, the only difference, maybe you can clear this up, is maybe the velocity of the soccer ball when it comes off of the foot may be different in between men and women.
Yeah, the speed of the game is the biggest change, right? Mm-hmm. Obviously, genetically, boys will be faster, will be stronger, will be capable of doing a little bit more, you know. But like I said, in the goalkeeper world, it's different, right?
They actually only have 1 minute of action, pretty much.
Of action, and the development is different, right? You I guess technically could put boys and girls, field players, to train together to play against each other, but you know, it's a different duel. You know, 14-year-old boys and, you know, or let's just say 16-year-old boys and 16-year-old girls are way different than each other, right? So in my world of goalkeeper, where the duel isn't physical, you know, my job as a goalkeeper coach is to develop them, yes, a little bit physically, but more mentally. There's no reason for me to separate them based on their gender. You know, they're not going against each other. They're not clashing against each other. They're not doing anything that will, you know, put them in danger, you know, body-wise. And not just to say that the girls may get hurt, because there's some girls, example, Emberly, Taylor Brook, you know, some of the other girls in Vegas, Taylor Rath, that can probably smash some of my guys as well. You know, it's just for safety reasons, you know, you don't do that. But when it comes to developing them, it's the same thing, you know. Like I said, they're humans at the end of the day. They're not boys or girls in my eyes. They're just humans, and they want to play this really, really tough position, really cruel position. So might as well just give them the best thing that I can do is just my experience, and obviously put them in the best scenarios that they can be, whether it's with boys or girls.
It seems like you look at goalkeeping in a you're playing 4D chess. A lot of people are playing 3D. There's a quote I found on one of your websites that I wanted to read, and it shows your in-depth knowledge to it. It said, Abdel's life goal is to change the football world by educating it about the importance of properly developing goalkeepers through a 10-year plan which implements 163 elements that will prepare a goalkeeper to achieve a professional debut.
Yeah, so one of the biggest things when I was first playing at UNLV, again, I left to Cleveland for a little bit, came back, and honestly, it kind of felt like I came into a whole new city, right? When I left, the club soccer was way different than when I came back. New leagues were in, so I had very, very little knowledge of it. And my biggest thing was, at that time, my mentor, Anton Trifonovs, was he had came in from Russia, and he had played Olympic qualifiers for Russia, Russian national team, Champions League or whatever. And we kind of just clicked, you know. I had a little bit of experience of my time playing in Mexico. He had a lot of experience, but our styles were very similar, which is very weird because, you know, you're talking about Latin America and Eastern Europe or whatever. So when I would help him, when I would assist him in coaching, it wasn't really much that he had to teach me, you know, that we use the same techniques, we use the same styles. So we clicked very well. And when you would then go into what you call in soccer, the American culture of coaching goalkeepers, it was very, very different, you know, and we've always struggled, and I struggled when I came back to Vegas to the thought process that parents had been, you know, cultured in so much of thinking, okay, well, it gets broken down by age groups, right? Middle school would be together, high school would be together, and elementary school kids would be together. And a lot of times they would be upset, you know, if it's like, well, my daughter or my son is in high school already. Why isn't she with the high school group? And from the get-go, you know, it was always my biggest struggle to not fall into that program of saying, well, the reality is that it's skill level, right? It doesn't matter by age. You know, I have right now Angel Iris' nephew, 2014 kid. You know, it's crazy. I mean, 2014, I was winning a championship with UNLV, and he was being born. And he, what is he, 6 right now? And he could probably destroy some of my 10-year-olds, right? So it's not I'm doing him a disservice by putting him where he technically should be with the other 6-year-olds. But the reality is that he's better than my 10-year-old. So why would I do that to him, right? Because that's the way pro soccer works. You know, you're good enough, and you continue to go up the rankings. You have 16-year-old kids. You know, yesterday I was watching a video, and it was 6-year-old Wayne Rooney scoring goals in the EPL, right? And if you think about the American culture, to think that it's like, well, he should be a sophomore in high school and he should be with his high school kids and that's where he should be because that's his age, right? But yet again, Rooney's banging goals in EPL for Everton at 16 years old, and there's a reason why he's there, right? Because he's been going, okay, you're good enough to handle the 13s, the 15s, the 18s, the reserve team. Okay, you're good enough to handle the first team. Let's continue it. And a lot of times when I would come back, I would hit that problem. I would hit that problem of goalkeeper parents telling me like, well, my daughter's a freshman, so she needs to be with the high school group. And me then having to break the story of like, well, your son / your daughter, whatever it is not better than some of the 5th graders I have, and that hurts them really bad because they think you're trying to harm them, their development. But the reality is that that's the only way to improve them, right? So we developed that element chart based off everything that we felt and what were able to get back from the German national team on how they develop their goalkeepers, because they do that. It's a 10-year program, right? So they try to get most of their kids in by age 7, and they try to make all of them debut by age 17. So it's a 10-year program, and there was a lot of backlash on it just because in U.S. soccer, goalkeepers aren't supposed to go full-time in the goal until they're about 13 and a half, 14, right? So it made no sense to do that. And then you have, Europeans or even down in Latin America putting their 16-year-olds in goal, right? So the fact that in the U.S. they wanted us to wait that long, and across the whole rest of the world, they're playing with the first team at that age, right? So we just continue doing that, and today it's been successful. We put in on average about 35 kids into 4-year programs on full rides. There's multiple academies across the country, and it's all with that same mindset. It's about skill level, not necessarily age group, right? So yeah, we've been successful with that.
I enjoy your line of thinking. You lower your time frame and you look at the long-term view of something. It's something that plagues Americans. I'm sure there's some other countries, but I notice this just from experience in America, is that we're so focused on instant gratification and what's in front of us right now that you completely miss out on how long growth and maturation comes for some people and how quickly it comes for others. You just want to put a box and a classification around it. That's like something Americans like to do. I don't know if it's because it's like it prevents your ego from being hurt or facing the harsh reality of whatever the circumstance is. But in order to succeed, you have to evaluate people based off of their maturity. I always felt like, personally, I was older, even though I was younger, because it's a combination of your life experiences that you've gone through, whether you've gone through hardship or you face different successes, and you combine that with the different knowledge from all these different classes or coaches that mentored you. It's a giant combination. So the evaluation process of somebody is much more than just what their age grouping is.
Yeah, it's a circle at the end of the day. I remember a few years ago, I used to talk a lot to a goalkeeper coach from, I think he was in Pittsburgh, and he was he was maybe about double my age, right? So if I was 25, he was close to 50 or whatever it was. And he would tell me like, you're so advanced on the way you see these things. He's like, it makes no sense that, I'm 50 and I'm barely figuring this out, and you've been figuring it out. And you're kind of, in a way, innovating this, right? And I'm not saying I'm innovating or changing the development of the position at all, by no means. But I felt like my mindset has came into this country and really kind of allowed us to see a different kind of view on it, right? And it's something, like you said, it's about your circle. It's about who you're around. It's about people, and you being able to take that in and say, okay, we're good to go. And going back on what you're saying, I think as Americans, we try to put everything in circles or in groups and say, okay, this is how it works, so this is how it's supposed to be. But the reality is that, in my world of goalkeepers, most goalkeepers don't become really, really good until they probably hit 29, 30. I think the prime age for a goalkeeper is 32 versus retirement age for most soccer players is 30, right? So it's only because it's such a mental position that it takes so long for you to get it. Right? To think that, okay, I'm 30, now I figured this out, and I've been doing this since I was 7, right? That makes no sense, but that's the reality. I think the downside of it all, a lot, is that in our country, there is no, we don't get paid like NBA or NFL, right? There's none of that money. So for the boys, it's kind of like, I know more than likely I will only play maybe up to USL, right? Maybe I'll get into MLS, but that's about it. And for girls, to be honest, majority of them only want to play up to college. That's it. The D1 full ride, that's the dream, and that's it, and I'm done. And just because of the pay in the women's professional world, it's not that much, and a lot of women still have to go and have another job, and they're pro athletes, and not to say that men don't have to, but excuse me, it's one of those things that it's really unfortunate. So yeah, so my goal, I think the goal as parents is just like, well, let's take care of this education, this full ride, and we're good with that. And since it's such a short period of time, right? If we do follow U.S. structure, they become full-time goalkeepers at 12, 13, and then by 17, they got to be committed, ready to go. It's such a little gap. So it's like, okay, well, this is how they told us it's supposed to be. Why aren't you doing that? Because this is what works, right? And in the reality, it's like, well, yeah, it can work. It also can't, right? Just because you're going to follow that plan doesn't mean your daughter is going to be D1 full ride or D2 full ride or whatever it is, So it's one of those things that I don't think you could put the goalkeeper position in the box. There's so many styles, there's so many ways of doing it. What we do has just worked, and that's it, And obviously, I'm not going to say it's the best way. We do get a lot of backlash, a lot of other national team coaches that don't agree with it. But at the end of the day, we're doing a great job, and our kids are getting full rides, and our kids are being happy, and that's what matters, right? Are you happy? Are you? In my way of seeing it, as someone who came up as a low income, immigrant kid, if it's free, I like it, right? Because I knew my parents couldn't afford it, right? So whenever I played club soccer, it was like, okay, is it free? Yeah, okay, then I'm willing to play. And when I went to college, it was the same thing, right? Is this free? Yeah, great. Okay, I'll play for this program. Don't care what it is, don't care where it's at, as long as it's free, because my mom and dad can afford that. And that's the way I see coaching. I did a terrible job if mom and dad have to pay, because they've invested so much already into my academy, and the fact that I can't give back when they expect it, right? Not to say most families expect full rides, but that's the dream, right? That I don't have to pay for my kid's education, especially since if she was 7 or he was 7, he's been with you, and now he's 17, and I still got to pay this whatever tuition it is, right? So I take that very personal to make sure that the kids leave my academy with full rides, or as close as a full ride as possible.
Especially with rising tuition in this country, it's getting outrageous. Yeah. But you also are a coach for the light.
Yeah.
Do you think so now you see both sides? Obviously, you have the academy, you played and coached at UNLV, and now you're on this semi-professional team. I've been hearing the MLS is coming to Vegas. We've probably been hearing this now for 5 years or more already at this point. Do you think there will ever be an opportunity or growing opportunities in America or Vegas specifically for people to play professionally at that next level? Like, do you see the popularity of soccer in America growing?
Well, I think it's growing tremendously. I mean, I just view, my life in the sense of when I was in high school, there was no MLS academies. I think LA Galaxy maybe was the only one. Chivas USA was maybe the other one. But even then, there was no housing. You had to go find somewhere to live, or, they would try to hook you up with a family, and that was it, right? Versus today, most MLS teams have some sort of housing for their academy kids, right? And they're all focused on developing kids, and they're finally kind of getting into, okay, it's a great thing if we make our own pros, right? So yeah, it is getting better. The Lights, they're technically a full second division professional team, right? So these guys get paid whether they get paid. And there's some guys that make great money, majority of them make pretty poor money, but when you compare it to what the U.S. pays, it makes sense why they're getting paid that much, right? At the end of the day, I haven't seen Cashman get filled up the way it was filled up that first week or that first month of us getting that team, right? I remember for opening match, you couldn't even go to the bathroom. It was so packed. So if you're getting a team like that week in, week out, yeah, the guys are going to get paid a little bit more. But by the end of last year, I mean, you're getting almost nothing there, right? So it is a good path. At the end of the day, it is a good path from kids to be able to go from playing high school soccer or amateur level in Vegas to maybe being good enough to go into the Lights or going into UNLV, then to the Lights. It's a good path. Unfortunately, at the end of the day, we're not an MLS team, versus if we did have an MLS team, you'd see a lot more kids doing that, because at the end of the day, it is a technically private-owned team that has to then, they depend on ticket sales. I have to pay whatever I can. I don't really need this academy kid to come in and play, because I need to sell tickets so I can pay my team, right? Versus when you have like the LA Galaxies, the Toronto FCs, they truly don't care about winning or losing in the USL level, because all they care about is my academy kids are getting developed, they're getting prepared. So then when they do go where in their eyes what matters is the MLS, they're ready to go, right? So it's a stepping stone. So it's two different mindsets depending on how much funding you got there. But with the Raiders coming in with, everything that's been going on with the lights, I could see MLS coming in soon. And hopefully once that happens, hopefully we become an MLS team that has housing, because then that would be fantastic for the kids, right? If you can provide housing, if you could bring in kids from Reno or from all the other states that don't have an MLS team, and you can provide a home for them, a schooling system, the way that some of these other teams have, well, that's great, and that way there is, a path to pro, and it's not just me jumping from organization to organization to organization to then finally getting it, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it seems like Mayor Goodman is pretty adamant on getting a team here. Yeah. I see her talking about it all the time on these different funding procedures, and I think last time it came up to a vote and it didn't pass. But as Vegas becomes more fully developed, as we were talking about earlier, I do see all of the different professional sports leagues from all the different sports across the country coming out here, and that would be good. And then the lights would turn into what, like a developmental league or a feeder team for the MLS, or would they actually turn it into the MLS team and be rebranded?
Usually, that team becomes the MLS team, right? Whether it stays at the lights or it gets rebranded into something else, it's just up to the choice of whoever owns it now, right? But at the end of the day, what you truly want is you want an MLS team. You then want a team where the lights today compete in at the USL level, and then you want your academy. That's what I think anyone in the soccer world prefers. More importantly for the kids, right? So that way, our best kids aren't leaving, into other states or cities or whatever, and then maybe mom and dad have to figure that out, whether they do have a housing or they don't have it. That way, they're here, and we have I would love to see, again, in my world, any of my kids going into that academy and being able to debut all the way to complete that full circle of development, right? So that would be a personal great dream of mine. Angel was maybe the closest thing we got to it, where it was a kid who came into my academy very late in his career, that then went to college, and then after a semester said, screw this, and just went pro with the lights, right? So it was a great thing. And for him, it was such an amazing thing to, they did a whole story about him, how he went to Rancho High School and, 2 miles or whatever distance it was to the Cashman or whatever, right? So it's great, and every now and then you'll see him on a great billboard, and that's awesome. But I think there would be nothing like us having an actual academy and the kids being able to go up those rankings, right? That you can say like, this kid debuted at 16 years old for the first team, right? That's always a great motivator for, I think, parents also to see that there is a little future in the world of soccer for their kids, and it's not just a hobby, and it's not just something to pay your tuition, that they can potentially make a living off of it. And it's only going to happen if we can get an MLS team, right? So, I think anyone in Vegas hopes that we can get one, whether it happens today or happens, far from now. As long as we get one, I think anyone will be happy for it.
Yeah, I hope to see it too. I haven't gone to any of the Lights games, but they did seem like they were fun. I know last year their record didn't reflect a winning team, and that's why a lot of people decided not to go. And
look, and at the end of the day, it's the least popular sport in the country, I think, right? So if you're not winning, I don't want to go. That's the mentality, a lot of it. Versus, like I said in the beginning when they got it, season tickets were crazy. You couldn't go to the bathroom. It was just packed. And I think everyone assumed with the team that was being assembled, we'd be okay. No one probably expected us to be amazing, but at the end of the day, it's such a tough sport. It's a sport that deals with so many ups and downs, and the fact that it's such a new sport in the U.S. People are easy to quit. And there's not like a diehard supporting system. Whatever happens, obviously there is. They have like a section with all the guys who are from whatever, the electric something, and they're there every single game. But more importantly, you want to commit to the community. And if that's not happening, then it's kind of like, okay, what are we doing? And wins usually is what brings the community in, right? So
yeah, no matter what the sport is, whether it's WNBA, obviously it turned out really well for the Knights. the lights. It'd be beautiful.
Yeah.
And if we did end up getting an MLS team, that would probably be huge for Kronis Academy, right? It would bring in a lot of new entrants because they have belief that there is a next level out here, and it could almost become like a feeder system for them.
Yeah, and like I said, right now for, majority of not even goalkeepers, of soccer players in the country, the dream is just, can I play D1 and can it be free? That's great, right? That's what we want, because I think the percent is 1.2% of kids will play Division 1, and I think it's like 0.9 will play D1 on a scholarship, right? So it's such a low number that it's such a great aspiration to do, right? Obviously, we get the MLS team, then I don't have to see it as all I need to do is get the scholarship, because it's like, well, I can just go pro if I'm good enough, right? I can maybe go pro at 15, and that changes a lot for a kid, right? Going pro at 15 in the MLS is a big deal, because maybe by 20 they're not in the US anymore, right? Maybe they're like the great success that we're having as a country right now with our little golden era of all the Americans that are playing over in Europe, right? You have kids playing at at Man City, at Barca, Ajax, and we hope that as a country it continues to be that, right? Because we're such a large country that we should be a powerhouse in the sport. We're a powerhouse in every sport, right? And we're still trying to figure out, why aren't we a powerhouse in this sport? So hopefully that helps out, right?
Yeah, it comes down to the grassroots movement, right? It's like the U.S. national men's team. They never do that well, but the women's team just absolutely kills it every year.
Yeah, and I mean, and when you look at the women's game, and it goes back to what I was saying, like, why would I, in a way punish the girls because they're girls, and you can't train with boys because you're not a boy, when yet again, the girls we're holding this country in the sport, right? If anything, it should be almost like the men. It's harder for them to train with the girls, because the girls is such a more cutthroat.
Yeah, the men are supplemental to the women's team.
Yeah. And obviously, you can say whatever you want, where like, oh, other countries, women are still, being treated the way they're treated. But at the end of the day, it's not the fault of the girls here. Our girls here are arguably the best girls in the country. And just to put it easy, I mean, Argentina came in to do their World Cup preparation matches, and they lose to UNLV. So to look at that, that Argentinian national team is coming in literally a month away from playing in the World Cup, and UNLV can beat them. And it's kind of like, it goes in perspective of how good our girls really are, right? And a lot of times it's due to, mom and dad invest a lot of money into sports training or whatever it is, or, lifting and all this kind of stuff. So you create some crazy athletes out there, right? I have a camp that we do every single year called the Kronis Academy invite-only camp, and we invite about 120 of the best kids that we can get into the camp. And
is this out of the city or through the country?
No, it's out of the city. So it's in Erie, PA. I bring them into a facility, and they stay there for 6 days. It's separated into 3 different weeks, and it's just basically we try to get the best of the best goalkeepers in the country, and they train. I believe it's like 45 hours in those 6 days. So it's 3 a days basically. And it's crazy when you see a kid, and in our world, we don't say, oh, he's 10. It's like, oh, he's a 2010, right? Because that's how you kind of know what level they're in. But when you see 2010 girls who this year are going to turn 11, and they're just so good, and you wonder why. And it's like, what's a cutthroat sport for them, right? It's really, really high intense, and they know that, to get to the national team as a girl is so hard. So as a boy also, but as a girl, it's very hard because we're the best country in the world for it, right? I think maybe Brazil is second. I don't know. But all I know is all our girls are, monsters when it comes to this sport. So, it's such a cutthroat there. It's so hard to be that. It's so hard to be into that national team.
Yeah, that's what soccer has an advantage, at least in America, over all the other sports, where they have an age requirement to get in there. Basketball didn't have an age requirement, or was 18 once you graduate high school, but then they put that limit in where now you have to have a year of college, and it's kind of hindered the amount of athletes, right? Like LeBron and Kobe and some of these best people to ever play didn't go to college. Obviously, Michael Jordan did, but now they put that limitation in, and it's just like this person could be playing professionally for one more year. So it doesn't make sense because now you're degrading the height of their
potential.
Yeah. And so with soccer, right, you call them 2010s because that's the year that they're born. So you're not putting an age limitation. So they could get in there earlier. They can train, build that mentality and those skills required to get to the top because competition breeds the most superior athletes.
Yeah, like you said, what is it? Iron sharpens iron, right? And in that camp that we do, it's that we try to get. Last year we had, I think it was like 6 national team kids. All of them that had experience in that national team. You had, I think, 4 pros. You had about, I think, 10 Division I athletes. So you're talking about a prime, top level camp that everyone there is just there for one reason only, and that's just to get better, right? And then you go down to our next week, which is, what we call the recruitment age, right? So we bring in whatever the age groups are that can potentially get recruited, and some of the coaches fly in or they drive in to do the recruiting from our camp. And it's the same thing. It's this year, when we opened registration, it was the first year that I didn't have to go into my wait list to, sign them up. It was just day one, gone, all the spots filled up, right? And you have I think it's 7 girls that have national team experience. You have, I think it's 3 or 4 boys, and then the rest of them are academy kids or DA kids. And, obviously for those that don't know about soccer, but it's top level kids, it's the cream of the crop, and they're all going to this camp because they know that everyone that's there, you can search them up on Instagram or on Google, and who they are, right? You know that they're other academy kids, that they're national team kids. And a lot of times I think, a lot of the things I do, I always view it as, would my dad have paid for this? Knowing how much he made at that time when we were growing up, would he have said, okay, it's worth me cutting back on however much I need to cut back, or maybe taking a second job to pay for this, right? And for me, when I do that, I felt like my dad would have maybe done the effort to pay for that camp, in the sense of, I can go see how far away my son is from a national team kid, right? If, in Vegas, we don't really get sought out a lot or scouted a lot versus like Texas does in New York or LA, because you just, it's easier to find an amazing athlete in LA because there's 20 million people versus in Vegas, well, maybe, right? Mm-hmm. But when you go to my camp and you have a kid that's from Hawaii flying in, and he's the best camp, and there's national team guys there, and then I'm calling, our national team contact or, some other top coach and saying like, hey, there's a kid here that we should really check out. And then, this was 2 years ago, and then by November, he's with the national team, right? And now he's in England, and he's doing the Nike friendlies. The Nike friendlies are basically any national team that's sponsored by Nike, they meet up. So it's like France, Brazil, US, Holland, whatever it is. And they do games, and it's only for the youth, right? They do it for the men's and the girls. But then he's on that. But that kid in Hawaii would have never got scouted like that, because one, we don't have that many resources as a country to get so many coaches out there to go to Hawaii and try to see if there's some random kid. But the fact that he came to this camp and literally blew everyone out, and you're like, okay, well then he's legit. Let's bring him in. And those kind of things are things that why I say like, maybe my dad at that time and anyone else today will make that effort of, okay, let's save this much money. Maybe from here something comes out, right? And majority of the kids from there get recruited, so it's always a win-win situation. You have, we have such a great relationship with the colleges across the country. At Ohio State, I think 3 of the 4 kids are Kronis kids. At Akron University right now, you have, I think 2 of the 4. At UNLV on the men's and women's side, it's basically everyone. So it's such an amazing relationship that we're building, and it's all to do to, the way of seeing it and the way of, how we said, iron sharpens iron, and getting those kids together and letting them, in a way, battle it out, right? There's always that competitive nature.
Yeah, you have to have competition. If you stifle competition and artificially suppress it, then you're just going to get the weakest link in the chain, or you're going to have a chain that's made of links of not iron. It's going to be of some sort of faulty substance. But in terms of Kronis, it sounds like Kronis has had a lot of success. I know you first started making goalkeeper gloves. Mm-hmm. How did you make that transition from just a glove company to hosting some of the best talents across the country at a goalkeeping academy?
Kronis is such a weird thing because I never made it in the sense of, oh, I'm going to do this and this is going to become a business. No, I was playing at, the school in Cleveland, and that was my first professional glove someone has ever bought, right? The school provided me, Coach Juro, he provided us with sales gloves, And that glove brand was like, I don't know how much it was, like 150 a pair, right? So he gave us 2 or 3 pairs each or whatever. And it was my first that high level glove. Point being is I then come back to UNLV. And then at that point, I'm like, well, I kind of want to keep using this glove. I personally can't afford it. Obviously, UNLV is a Nike school, so we're only going to get Nike. And like I said, that opened doors where I met coaches from other places of the country who would say like, oh, I make these in like China. And it's just so my academy kids look the same, right? And it would maybe say like, I don't know, let's just say it said like Abdel Rodriguez Goalkeeper School, right? So that's what it would be. And I'm like, oh, I didn't know you can make goalkeeper gloves. That just seems so far-fetched, right? So, and this is still like pre-social media age. I mean, obviously it's 2011, but Snapchat.
It's in its infancy.
Yeah, I mean, Facebook was the thing at that time. You know, I went through MySpace, Facebook, Instagram didn't have videos yet or nothing like that. You know, it was still like just a picture kind of thing. So to find a contact like that was, I don't even know how to search it. So I remember I would Google days at a time, find like, you know, goalkeeper gloves manufacturing. You would never find it. Somehow I found one, right? And I order maybe 10 pairs, something like that, of the same exact things that this glove that Coach Euro had given us so I can have the exact same stuff at UNLV. Excuse me. And yeah, I make them and that's it, right? And I put Kronis on it and I come to UNLV and everyone's like, oh, let me get a pair, right? Let me get a pair. Point being is I didn't have any pairs for myself at the end of it. So all my buddies got them, you know, people that I knew. And then it was like, all right, well, let me get now pairs for myself again, right? So thankfully, with that money that technically I made from those 10 sales or whatever, I then had gloves for myself that were free, right? And that just continued, right? And then, yeah, there was a time I feel like when I transitioned into, okay, I'm going to make it into a legit business, no one wanted to buy them, right? So I'd sat on inventory for maybe like 6 months.
It's so funny when that happens.
It was horrible because then I'm a UNLV athlete, full-time student. You know, our schedule is pretty hectic. And then I still have to go to the parks at the end of the night to try to freaking sell these gloves because I'm broke, right? I need money for whatever it is, right? So, yeah, that just continued, right? So that was 2013 and here we are, right? We have different distribution centers in 2 places of the country. We're you know, different countries, you know, Paris, England, Ireland, Japan, you know. So it's just really, in a way, blown up. I don't really know if it's because of the gloves or if it's because of the academy, but point being is that they both kind of just, you know, help each other out a lot, you know, and we provide gloves to a lot of the schools in the country, a lot of the universities. So it was a weird transition. I felt like my biggest success is combining them, right? Before it was just, I would coach because I liked it, but I always wanted just to be, you know, a business guy or a Kronis guy or whatever it was. And once I figured out was like, well, I can make this into the Kronis Academy. I can then, you know, make Kronis. Oh, we can also make a very, very hard camp to get into. All that just helped out, right? Because now you have kids flying in from everywhere. I mean, this year we have kids flying in. If it wasn't for COVID last year, we had the U17 national team kid from Holland, from Egypt, from the girl from Mexico, 2 kids from Paris, 1 kid from Ireland, all flying in, Germany, right, to my camp. And it's kind of like, that's pretty crazy when you consider the fact that I started this just to get gloves for UNLV, right? I started it with, you know, shout out to financial aid with $250 that I had left over. And that was it, right? So $250, and here we are today where we have arguably the most exclusive camp probably in the world, you know, countries all over the academies all over the country. And yeah, what I guess my real job, you know, Kronis.
That is beautiful. Isn't it satisfying when you build 2 complementary businesses or two projects that you've been working on just complement each other so well that it just morphs into one, and then you use that as just one brand and you can leverage that on top of other things and get various coaching positions or different prestige upon it. Yeah,
I mean, it's been great. Like I said, I was able to sit down during my second year of college with the ex-VP for General Electrics. And at this point, you know, it was nothing. But about a few years back, you know, a few of my Kronis kids, or whatever you want to call them, kids that wear Kronis, have done like their business final or whatever it is, their senior project on me, right? And I've had a few business professors call me and say like, dude, if you don't mess this up, this is a pretty heavy hitter, right? You have they kept using the word, a self-sustaining ecosystem. You literally produce the equipment, you produce the athletes, then they go to college, that then they request, whatever school it is, let's say UNLV, say, I don't want to wear Nike. I've been wearing Kronis since I was 7. That's all I wear. So now you have the university saying, okay, well, I guess we'll buy this glove brand because everyone likes it. And then you just continue it, right? And they're saying it's a full cycle with your product being whatever it is, whether it's an item or the kits that we help produce, taking us all the way around, right? So it's been a crazy circle with that, where whatever we've touched has really helped out.
That is awesome. Yeah, it's having a self-feeding ecosystem is similar to Amazon, right? Mm-hmm. Like Amazon has that same business where they deliver it to the customers and they host other products on there, but then they make their own products, and you sign up with Amazon Prime, so therefore you feel obliged to use their services, and it's really self-fulfilling. You have one more component though, because you also supply the athletes, and I guess, do you have to do recruiting for the athletes, or do they all approach you because the demand is so high to get into the Kronis Academy?
I don't know. I mean, it's weird because like today, for example, there was a point where the academy was massive here in Vegas, right? Massive. I handled, I would say, probably like 95% of the goalkeepers. If you're a goalkeeper, you were with me or under under the Kronis umbrella, right? But it was so big to the point that I didn't feel I was doing the great job that I knew I could do. There was kids that, I would struggle to know their parents' name or who's your dad. And I like to have that communication, because at the end of the day, I like to have really high communication with the mom and dad, because I only get the athlete for 3 hours a week. You get your kid all day. So I need to know, how is he at home? How's his nutrition? Why is he gaining weight? Why is he losing weight? I need to know all this. And when it was growing so big, it was just...
The intimacy of the relationship was fractured.
It went from being a very exclusive thing to open, and everyone was coming in, right? And my thing as a coach, coaches will never say this, but I truly believe that as a coach, you can't be good at every phase of development. You're not good at, developing little kids to developing the second phase to developing the final phase. You just can't. It's not possible, because mentally it's different levels. For example, I myself, I can handle every development, but I know I thrive in phase 1. That's where I think I'm very, very, very special, very unique as a coach, versus, one of my best friends, Augusto, is probably one of the best guys I've ever met in phase 2. And then you have, Anton, who is a tremendous coach at phase 1 and 3, right? And not to say that they're not good enough, like we're not good enough to handle all of them. But every coach has, I have a tremendous amount of patience. I have a sister with cerebral palsy. As a kid, I kind of was, parent 3 to help out a lot. So I've always been around, children with special needs. And that has always, translated perfectly to me as a coach, where I can handle 6-year-olds, 7-year-olds, 8-year-olds, 9-year-olds. And it's never been like, oh my God, I can't deal with these little kids. I feel like a babysitter or something like that. I've just been very, very blessed to have that virtue and understand how to make things very special for them, where then at that point, they continue into phase 2, and now they're 12, 13, 14, and now they're getting called up to the national team. Now they're getting recruited. Now they're getting, on a recruitment list or whatever it is. So it all comes from that phase 1, and that's where I'm, amazing at. And it's crazy to think, like, when you mentioned, like, oh, you're with UNLV or with the Lights, and that's great. It's been a great achievement. But to me, it's the fact that I can handle that age group. And when I see those kids get to college, and to think that I was there from point 1, from literally 0 to the moment they got to the 168 element, that's a bigger, accomplishment for myself.
Right. Yeah. Your Kronis Academy is similar to the podcast, and just give me some time to make this comparison. I use this all the time. When you're hosting a podcast, right, especially a guest-based podcast, the guests that you bring on, you're investing social equity into this person. The majority of people I have on are generally like in the beginning or middle stages of their career. So on the contrary of like a financial investment where you just put money in and see the growth, when you're investing social equity into somebody, you're basically giving them confidence that like, hey, I'm in your corner. You know, I want to share your message. Like there's like this intimate relationship, you know, after you're sitting here talking for an hour, you feel like you knowing each other for a while. You have that person in your network. Same is similar to Kronis, right? You're seeing them in phase one, you're developing them. And then once they go on and either have a successful career in the soccer space and domain or out in real life, they come back to you, and that sometimes there's some sort of offer that isn't financially that ends up compounding exponentially.
Yeah.
Which is amazing to see. Like I use this example. I had this gentleman, Jeff Abraham, on the show. He one of his employees for one of his previous businesses, he groomed him to be a CEO for another business. This guy ended up building a company that ended up going public. And so before it went public, he basically went to Jeff and was like, hey, here's an opportunity to invest in my company if you want before it goes public, like it's about to. And he made a lot of money off of it. And those kind of situations, it's not just direct investing where, you know, you're putting the money in and you can cash out whenever.
Yeah.
You're investing your confidence and, you know, even like a piece of you and your wavelength, that then you feel so much better that they succeed and they come back to you, and it's just so much more fulfilling because you never know what may transpire from it.
Yeah, no, I mean, one of the hardest things right now that I'm dealing with that I don't know how to deal with is all these kids coming back after they go to college. And, you know, I mean, you're still there for 4 years or whatever it is. So, you know, in the summer when they're all back and I'm like, how in the world can I handle 30, 40 something college kids physically demanding? I can't, right? It's so hard. With the little kids, it's a mental. And then with maybe phase two, it's still mental, a little bit more physical. But as they start getting older, it's just, you know, I've taught them everything. You know, some of them have outgrown me as a player already. So it's kind of like, there's not much more I can teach you. I just need to maintain you. You know, maybe we improve physically with getting stronger, faster. But I physically can't handle 40 something kids that are coming back. And to think like that's only getting worse. It's only getting bigger and bigger. You know, this year in 2020, we put, I think it was like 7 kids into MLS academies. 4 kids went pro. I think we're at like 20 kids that committed to, you know, full rides. They're all going to come back next summer and want to train. And it's like, how am I going to handle now? 60, you know? So yeah, I mean, it's a beautiful thing when that happens, you know, and to me, the biggest benefit is when they come back and they want to coach, you know, they want to learn how to coach because, one of the things that I always did and a lot of coaches don't like is I would, like I said, I wouldn't coach them based off age group, right? So every now and then I would throw in Emberly as a junior in high school with my little 7-year-olds. And it's maybe annoying when they think like, why am I here? You know, why am I here with these little kids? But you have to remember that at one point you were that little kid, right? You were that 12-year-old that wanted to train with, you know, the 17-year-old at that moment. Emberly in the city and Angel in the city and all these big name goalkeepers in the city, in a way, are role models for these children, you know? My little sister's 11, and for years when she started training with me, she was 7, she would only feel comfortable if Emberly was there because she had been knowing Emberly. So today, when Emberly comes back on her free time and she wants to help coach or she wants to be around the kids or whatever, Emma makes that connection with her because she's been around her for so long. But these kids look up to her, right? So for years, I would have her go down with them, train, because the same way that at that point when you were a little kid, you wanted to train with the higher group, you should be able to be an older kid and come down with the little guys and show them how it is, right? Show them that it doesn't matter if you're here training with Emberly or you're here training with a 13-year-old or you're here training with the 6-year-olds. You're here training with Kronis. You're here training and developing with Kronis. It's not who's around you. It's literally, you know, the trust that you're giving the program. And that's why we've had so much success a lot of times where our little 7-year-olds stay with us for so long because they know that it's not about age group. It's not about whatever. It's about skill level, and they have to continue. And they know that every now and then, you know, I'll throw an Angel as a full pro with the 13-year-olds, and Angel will just go full 100% because it's what I demand from him. And they start to see that gap, right? They understand that gap because a coach of mine here in Vegas told me that the negative effect of having pros so close to our academy is the fact that they assume it's that easy, right? Emberly, Division I athlete. There's only 1% of kids that do that, right? Lucas Betts from UNLV, same thing. It's only 1% of kids that do that, but they see them every day. So to them, it's normal. Oh, you're a UNLV guy, whatever, you know? Oh, Angel Alvarez, you're a pro guy, whatever. Angel Alvarez has represented U.S. national team and Mexico. He's one of the few kids that has done that, right? Thomas Olsen, they see him there, whatever. U.S. national team kid also. they're so close that it's not a big deal. But you forget how big of a deal it is, right? So when you throw them in there and they see exactly what it is, and, you know, then you have the 17-year-olds, the 18-year-olds that think like, oh, okay, like I can hang with them in training. Go stand in the stadium, you know, go stand in the stadium that's sold out when the lights are losing and you're getting, you know, whatever thrown at you. You know, I've had games at UNLV when we went to California, people throwing, you know, drinks, tacos, whatever, you know, they search up your mom's name and they're yelling at you the whole time, right? Go handle that. And you'll understand the difference of why these athletes are there. It's not just because of what they do in training. It's everything that comes psychologically, mentally. And that's why we throw them in there sometimes to understand, you know, I'm not using my little sister as an example always, but for example, Emma as a 11-year-old to understand the difference of what Emberly is, right? Yeah, she's going to be faster. She's going to be stronger. But, you know how to carry yourself as well around those kids, right? Know how to carry yourself around, you know, in Vegas right now, probably our really strong age group is the 05s and goalkeepers, right? We had 4 kids go MLS Academy. Doesn't happen. You know, that never happens. And then right now, 2007 age pool, to me, it's the best age pool I've ever seen since I've been a player myself. And to think that, you know, there's like 10, 12 of those kids that you can put rank 1 to 12 and you don't know where to put any of them because they're all so tight, right? And when you bring Angel into that picture or Emberly into that picture, they start to understand what it is. You know, they start to understand how big of a difference it is to make that step. That's a big step.
And when you have those grounding moments when you're younger, you tend to remember that forever, right?
Yeah,
it's like when you go out in the yard and you want to race your dad and you think you could win, and then he actually runs and you're like, wait, what?
Yeah.
He used to always let me win. And you see that reality and you're like, oh crap. Yeah. So then you make that inference of that difference between your skill levels. And it's cool too when you see your students come back. I think it shows that they have an emotional connection to you, right? Like they've outpaced you physically and you're aware of that, but they know that they still have something to gain when they come back to you and speak with you. They know there's more knowledge that they need to add to their repertoire of their game and to come speak with you for that.
Yeah, no, there's so much, you know, and I've had kids, like my academies ran very, very, very structured. You know, you show up at the certain time that we need and you're done at the time that we tell you that you're going to be done at, right? And I think for parents that makes it easier because they're able to, you know, kind of plan their day around that. But while you're there, you know, it's work. You know, it's a very, very structured academy. And I've had kids who have came into my academy, have been with me for so long, and then decide to leave and go join another goalkeeper coach, which is great. I don't mind it. I don't really care for it. Excuse me, my biggest success is, are you happy? Yeah, great. That's all I care about, right? Whether you're happy with me or you're happy there. At the end of the day, here, my academy in Vegas, you represent Vegas. You don't represent Kronis. You don't represent anything. You represent Vegas. So that way, you know, like my little sister or all the 10, 9, 7-year-olds are going to look and be like, oh, that kid's from Vegas. I know him. I've seen him play and he made it there. I can too, right? Doesn't matter where you're training at. As long as you're happy, it's what matters. But I've had kids who have done that, came to me, gone somewhere else, then maybe gone elsewhere, and then they come back to us because it's like, yeah, I went to an academy. It was very, very professionally ran, and the only thing that mimics that is mine, right? The amount of you show up at this time, you leave at this time. We expect this kind of work. There's no messing around. There's no time to joking around. Because again, like I said, the way I pay back families is, here's your full ride. Yes, it's not physically me giving it to them, but you trusted in me to do that. You know, whether you want to or you don't, it's my way of paying you back as a mom and dad saying, hey, we got a full ride for your kid. Here you go. And as much as, you know, parents will tell me like, oh, he's only or she's only 12. It's a long time from now. And then 14 comes around and now colleges are knocking on your door. And then you realize like, oh, that's only 2 years away. You know, it's not that much time. So when you waste so many years at that age messing around or creating a fun environment, you also in a way harm them, right? And a lot of kids can't handle that. That's why like when parents come and they want to join my academy, it's like, sure, bring them and try it out for one day and then tell me. Because then they'll realize that, okay, kids aren't here to mess around, right? One of my coaches once told me like, in your academy, everyone chose you. Everyone that's there, every family has chosen you or Kronis per se, right? Because I'm not always there. They chose Kronis. They trust in Kronis. Versus when you go to other clubs or whatever it is, they chose a club and whoever is a coach, whatever. And I'm just trying to have fun. And if I'm not having fun, then I'm out. I don't want to be with you. But here they chose you directly because of whether we're providing success, whether they like it, whether their parents think it's structured, but they chose that, right? And it's hard for someone to come in new, and it kind of takes you, you know, a little bit out because one, there's a uniform involved. There's a whole activation done before. If, for example, training today starts at 5, there's their kids there at 4 that are preparing, getting ready. And then the next session maybe starts at 5. And then there's kids, at 6, and there's kids there that are maybe also 4 or 4:30 and they're preparing. And when new kids come in, they're not used to that because they're still seeing it as, okay, I'm 8, I'm 9, I'm 10, I'm 12. This is still my hobby. Everyone that chose the Kronis Academy, it's no longer a hobby. You know, they have goals and aspirations, and they're really big goals. And I think as a coach, it's my job to make sure that I as a coach can manage those dreams that they have, right? And obviously I can't give them I can't give them everything, but I can probably not, I would say 99% of the time, reach their college goals.
Yeah, it sounds like you've crafted a very specific culture out there, but that's what brings people back. And the quality of expectations for your athletes is hired, which brings them back. And also something that I believe is freedom is one of the best mechanisms to build trust, right? Yeah. Like the longer you keep a dog on the leash, the more it's just going to want to run away. But if you let the dog, run around, have some freedom, they always come back because they have that trust with you that you're going to allow them to go test the waters with whatever they want to do. Yeah. But then once they're done testing, they know that you're always there with what you need.
Yeah, no, and I think one of the things that makes me very special in it is that I don't depend on it financially, right? So a lot of, for example, I was in the running for some of the MLS goalkeeper jobs or whatever, and I was talking to one of my old coach at UNLV, and he was saying, like, the downside is that you don't, like, whatever they pay you financially, like, you don't necessarily depend on that, right? I have Kronis, I have camps, whatever it is, where other coaches, like, this is what they do for a living. Mentally, I'm freer, right? I'm not there, counting these kids and thinking, like, oh, they're 70 times whatever. Okay, I'm making X amount. It's not like that. My mind is free of that. And a lot of times what we charge is mainly for insurance purposes, the other coaches that are there, field rentals, whatever it is, right? So the reality is that my mind is free on that. And a lot of times, like, I'll send my kids to other coaches and I'll be like, hey, I need you to go train with this coach. Why? Because he does this one thing that I don't do that good at. Go ahead. Coaches don't send no one to me, right? Because of the fear of I may lose him. And you start to see the difference in the sense of, if I lose you, again, I don't care. Go be happy. Go test the waters. Go do whatever you want. In the long run, they always come back in the sense of, I have so many connections with the colleges and it helps them out and it helps out the parents. But because I don't necessarily depend on that family or whatever it is, right? Where other coaches do, and that's understandable. It's not something that, everyone deserves to get paid whatever for what they know and what they're able to teach. But like I said, no one sends me kids. No one says, hey, go train with Abdel because he can teach you this, of the fear of, okay, I'm going to lose that feet from that kid, right? Because majority of the kids will come in and they'll stay and they'll never leave. And it gets hard for them. And for me, like, I send them out. Oh, you can't drive across town where my field is? Great. There's this coach that's by Henderson, may help you out, right? I have families driving in from LA every weekend, Lake Havasu, Salt Lake, that drive in every single week to train with us, and they'll figure out how to stay there, whether they have a home here, a family here, a hotel, and it's every single week.
I think empathy is one of the main characteristics that a leader possesses. And that sounds like something that you possess a lot in many different manners throughout this conversation, right? When you were speaking about hosting Kronis Academy, you look into the parents' shoes, or you fit the parents' shoes and understand like what it would cost for them, what are they getting out for it. You also can put yourself in the player's shoes and look like, hey, I actually lack in this coaching specification. Go out to the other coaches because I know that's better for your development. And you're leading it with passion because you're not out there nickel and diming, counting every player as a profit. There's a lot of people plagues that we're humans, we like to make money, but when you could get past that that monetary valuation and realize that, you know, that's just a social construct, and these meaningful relationships that you're building and player development is going to lead to much better outcomes for yourself and for the players. That's what really drives success.
Yeah, no, and I mean, at the end of the day, it's I just feel like if you're gonna do it, just do it for passion. You know, like that saying, like if you're gonna do it for money, it's not gonna come to you, right? If you chase it, it's never gonna come. And you know, luckily we've had a lot of success with it. And you know, by no means is you know, a Tesla something that's amazing or out of this world for majority of the people, but it was something that I really really thought about not getting, right? I didn't want coaches to see it as like, oh, he drives a Tesla, or before the Tesla, I wanted to buy a Porsche actually. And I didn't want coaches to think like, oh, this freaking guy's driving a Porsche and we're over here or whatever it is. Because yeah, coaching is a very, very difficult job for the money that you earn, right? It's a very hard job. You're out there in the cold and the hot. In the weekends, you don't have them off. Tournaments are usually on holidays. So like you're literally out there at the times that you don't want to be. And most coaches, you know, you don't make a great living off of it. Most coaches make a decent living, and it's more of the passion why they do it for, right? So, excuse me, the other day, you know, I go to a meeting, and obviously I'm in my car, and it's the first thing, you know, that everyone notices, like, oh, Abdel's with the Tesla or whatever it is. And I'm so happy that I didn't get a Porsche, because I think I think the Porsche would have, like, they would have taken it a whole different way. But again, they forget that I don't do this. That's not what I do, right? I have other businesses, and that's been the major factor of what I do for a living. But it's unfortunate that, you know, like earlier you're saying, like we like to put people in this little square, or how it's supposed to be. And it seems like in this country, as a coach, as a youth coach, you're supposed to be, you know, fairly average under, you know, and if you're over, it's kind of like, you're screwing people over for real, right? Mm-hmm. Because like I said, you know, coaches don't get paid much, unfortunately.
Yeah, they think your ulterior motive is the money.
Yeah. And again, like I've had coaches tell me that. I've had coaches tell me that, like, oh, like it seems like you're just after the money, and it's like, I don't just do this, right? And I truly believe that if I did do it, it probably wouldn't be as big as it is, because then obviously you're thinking, okay, well, I need X amount to make, you know, a living, and now your mindset changes. You know, you can't go under a certain number of kids or whatever it is. Or, you know, I hire 7 coaches, you know, I got them out there, and it's like, Angel the other day was saying, like, man, there's 7 kids here and there's 5 coaches. It's literally a coach per kid. And when we grew up, we didn't have anyone, you know. Every coach out there is getting paid, right? And it all comes from the fact that I believe that the more coaches are there, the more chances of you getting more reps. You know, one thing I guarantee for every parent is you'll get 300 reps in my academy. Majority of the coaches will give you, if lucky, 75. And the only reason I do that is because in my head, I figured if you can only afford to come once a week, let me give you the 300 reps so it's taken care of. Because on an average coach, it's going to take you, 4 times to get close to that, 5 times or whatever it is. So I figured if you come once and the other kid goes somewhere else 4 times, with my one, it's good enough, right? It'll host you. But majority of my kids train 3-4 times a week, right? So what happens now when my kid is getting 300 reps every single session, times 4, 1,200, you know, times 4 of that in the month, you know, you're upwards of almost 5,000 reps times a year. You know, like that Kobe Bryant quote goes, at one point, you're never going to close my gap. I could take a year off and you're never going to get close to it. And it's the reason why I have so many coaches out there, to make sure that if you can only make it this one time, it's going to be whatever, you know, what you're investing into is coming right back.
It's going to be worth it.
Yeah. And I have families doing that once a week. And obviously the more you do, the more success we're going to have. But with that once a week, my goal is the same, right? I'm going to get you a full ride somehow. Don't know how, but you know, we're going to try to figure this out with once a week, because it's not, like I said, like it always revolves around, would my dad pay for this, right? Would my dad put the hard-earned money that he was making into, let's say, a 28-year-old that was charging, you know, whatever it is to be in this academy? And I ask him all the time, like, would you do it? He's like, I don't know, you know, but I think because he looks at the number, but when you look at, well, I mean, I think it's different because I was on a full ride, so he never had that expense of paying for my college. But when you look at the fact that many kids pay whatever they pay for tuition, yeah, you know, then you think about it and you're like, okay, yeah, then I for sure would have done it, you know. But for example, I tell them about my sister, you know, now, like, okay, if you had to, you know, hire me as a coach and pay this fee, knowing that 98% success rate of her going to college for free was going to happen, would you do it? And they're like, yeah, 100%, because one, she has to do something, right? They have to be active in something. And at the end of the day, tuition is fairly expensive. So, you know, it helps them out. And like I said, if you can only afford once a week, it's not, I think it's a pretty douchey move for a coach to be like, well, it's not going to happen then because you're not willing to pay me more. I think whatever it is, right? You know, whatever it is, if that's all the family can afford, you as a coach need to figure this out. You know, it's not their fault. It's no one's fault. It's on you to figure it out. You know, whether you want to give them sessions for free, whether you're going to try to do more for them. I don't know. But as a coach, that's your responsibility.
It is. Yeah. You have to be a leader at the end of the day.
Yeah. Before
we get out of here, I have one parting question for you. Same to everybody. What does Las Vegas mean to you?
Las Vegas is home. You know, Las Vegas is, you know, I was born in another country, raised here, and I've been not all across the world, but I've been to a lot of countries, and, you know, I can't wait to come back every single time. You know, it's home. They asked me the other day if I would ever live somewhere else, and I was like, yeah, I'll probably live in Osaka. You know, I love Japan. I think it's an amazing country. But when you consider, you know, what we have in Vegas, the fact that I can drive 30 minutes and be anywhere, it's an amazing feeling, you know. Yeah, like I said, I'm a Vegas native, even though I wasn't born here. Everything is Vegas, and I think there's certain cities in the world that if you were like, oh, you're from there, you know, I think London is one of them, New York is one of them, LA is one of them, and you tend to forget that Vegas is one of them also, right?
It really is.
Yeah, like I have people from Facebook that'll, you know, from Brazil, and it's like, oh, where are you from in the States? Las Vegas, like, oh my God, you know, like. Yeah, because you just have this image of what Vegas is, even though it probably isn't that, you know, but it's one of those places that I feel like we're so small and people kind of aren't really proud of being from Vegas, but Vegas is such a unique city, you know?
It is. It's a lot of international people's second home as well.
Yeah, you know, like you said, the retirement or whatever it is, but the amount of stories you have here, you know, I trained a kid and his grandfather was like he's from London or something, and he played professionally. And it's kind of like, I love going to other countries and just asking someone like, what's your favorite soccer team? You know, or the last time I was in London, I was going through the TSA, and it was an older gentleman. And I was like, what's your favorite soccer team? He's like, oh, it's freaking Tottenham, right? And we're talking about, you know, Tottenham or whatever. And we can have hour conversations about it. And I'm telling him about the goalkeeper and what I do, and they think it's amazing. You can't have that here with majority of the people, right? But every now and then you get some random guy that is from Brazil, and you just mention whether it's Palmeiras or whatever, Corinthians or whatever team, and they're like, oh, I either love them or hate them, and it just goes, right? Because there's so many international guys here, so many international, and obviously there's a lot of people that are Americans from other descents that don't know soccer, don't know much about soccer, but as Vegas grows, that sport continues to grow as well, especially for girls, you know? It's so big, so many dads that played baseball or football, and their little girl plays soccer, and they're like, I don't know anything about this, but she wants to do it, so I guess we're gonna do it, right? And I tell parents all the time, like, if you played a different sport and then your kid played soccer, it's kind of hard. But then your kid decides to be a goalkeeper, that's really hard because you don't know anything about it. You're trying to learn a sport literally within a sport in a way, right? So now Vegas is everything. It's such a great place to be.
The land of opportunity and the golden age of culture.
Definitely.
Where do I send everybody, the listeners or people watching on YouTube, to follow you or get involved with Kronis or anything affiliated?
Usually all my social media handles are just Abdel RDZ, and then Kronis is just Kronis, you know?
Look it up.
Yeah, just, you know, if you Google it, it pops up, you know? It's such a great thing to be in.
Yeah, everyone needs to follow this man. Make sure you subscribe, like, whatever to any of the channels. Dude, really enjoyed this conversation. We got to talk for an hour and a half. You are definitely an entrepreneur, a leader, and a coach, and you've found a way to perfect and combine all three of those into one unique capability for yourself.
Yeah, I mean, it's been a journey, and I hope it lasts for a lot longer. I don't know how much my body can take more. I've always said that by probably 30, I'd be done physically being out there. But at the end of the day, I've been doing this since I was 4. So I don't know. I don't know if it's going to be that, you know, whether I'm running it from a freaking office or something, but it's going to continue going regardless.
It's driven by passion.
Definitely.
Well, Abdel, thank you for coming on. Appreciate it. Look forward to doing this sometime in the future and following you along this journey, which seems to have no top.
Yeah. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you guys for listening, and we'll catch you next time.